Alright, Justin, so you wanted me to take a look at your log, see if there's anything of note, so let's check it out. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get the logs and the WAV files or the video files saved out together. So we have that done already. I'm going to go ahead and open your log. This is recorded with, you have Betaflight 3.3 on it, so I'm making sure I have 3.0.0 RC. I'm using the clean flight version of it. So I have your log open now. Looks like it was the 5th flight that had the recording associated with it, the high def recording, so we're going to switch to that. Now we're going to go back up and open the video file itself. So we're going to hit open, same open button, and then we're going to go ahead and pick the media file. Once we have that in there, we need to sync them up. So the best way I do it is I find a spot in the log where the where you can tell it's arming or whatnot. The biggest thing I usually use is stick commands. So I'll go ahead and turn on my RC command, and which is go into setup, and then you can hit add graph for RC command. You can see this is the throttle, pitch roll, yaw, stuff like that. So I can see I'm lifting off right around here. So I'm going to go ahead and do an M for marked point on that, and then I'm just going to keep scrolling to the right until I actually see the video start to move. Oh, now I went too far. So let's back up. And I'll just keep moving it back. It is nice if you can have some sort of demarcation in the audio or something of that nature. I didn't note anything of that, so I'm just kind of going by motion here. So you can see it's still lifted off. It looks like right around there is where it starts to actually pick up. So that might be synced pretty good on its own. So let me hit, and then you'd hit Alt M, and then that brings those 2 points together. So let's go ahead and see how I did. So you can see it's lifting off here. The other part I moved on or used on that was you essentially did a punch out here, and you can see the throttle's raising up. One point of note here is I can see you have the RC interpolation going for the yaw and the throttle. I think we talked about that before, and the smoothing's looking real good there. But I wanted to note that for other people that if you're not using if you haven't edited your RC interpolation in the CLI to include throttle and yaw, you definitely want to do that. I don't know why it's not like that by default, but nevertheless. Alright, so right around here it looks like that's right where you started to input the right roll command, and you can see that that we're pretty on target. So you can see this is where you started to go, left roll, and you can see the video is really where it's starting to do that left roll as well. So I have that synced up. You may have to do micro adjustments, where you do another mark point if it wasn't quite on, and then hit Alt M. So anyways, that's how you can get it synced. I actually got this perfectly lined up, so that was just a quick one to demonstrate it. So I have it all lined up here. Another thing you'll note is that I'm able to switch around between all kinds of different graphs just by pressing some keys real quick. So what you can do is, as you get different graphs set up, you can hold down Shift and press 1, Shift and press 2, Shift and press 3 for different graph setups, and that will store those in the 1, 2, 3 up to 0. Go up, your keyboard goes up to 9 and then over to 0, and then you can just recall those. So I usually have one for sound, one that has everything, so on and so forth. So anyways, I know the first thing we kind of talked about on the Facebook chat there is the motors, and that was a big tell. So if I'm looking at the motors here, your motor 3, so it's motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, and motor 4. So motor 3 is, the flight controller is calling for a lot more thrust to be placed on it than it's producing. That's telling me that this motor is weak. And honestly, that needs to be fixed. That alone can be why you have prop wash, because that sluggish behavior or weak behavior, it could be very difficult to overcome that with any kind of tuning. And essentially you need to look at the motors graph for that. You can see here in a couple spots when you're doing some peak punch outs, you're losing a lot of thrust. This one's all the way up. It's calling for 100% demand. So it's calling for this to be at the max speed it can be. And even the max speed that this thing can push out, you're losing around 25 to 30% thrust in general for your whole quad. So you can see the other motors are only able to get up to 73, 72, 76%. Now that goes up here a little bit as things unload. So at peak, you know, I guess it's around 20%. So you're losing 20% thrust by that one motor not being able to produce its peak thrust. So I would address that first. Joshua Bardwell just did a great video. I think what we were really looking for me to look at is this, you know, the prop wash. There is quite a bit of prop wash yet. I would address that motor first. Then we have to come back to address the prop wash. If you don't address that motor, I really feel it's a losing battle, or it's just going to be a lot more difficult. We may never get there. The other thing I wanted to check on is, you know, if you had stage 2, the stage 2 low pass filter disabled or not turned on. It looks like you're running, you know, PT1 90. The dynamic notch is turned on, which is down in the lower right here. And then the static notches are turned off. So this is basically a tune coming from like the Betaflight 3.2, which honestly is fine. I don't know that the new BQRC filter really gets you anywhere, especially with your quad-based noise. So if I switch over to my noise graphs here, where I have the debug mode notch on, and then I overlay the gyro, so this is pre-filtering and post-filtering. I can turn off the graph. Oh, I guess I can't turn on. Yeah, I can turn off the graph here. So you can see this is the vibrations coming in, and then this is what the filtering is doing. So if I isolate down, say the roll axis, and look at that, look how much the filters are really attenuating that. I'm going to hit the S key to turn off smoothing. So by default, smoothing is turned on, so it kind of smooths out the displayed lines. That's more for PID tuning, but obviously if you're looking at noise, you want to turn that off. So you hit S, and you can see down here at the bottom of the smoothing. And you can see some of that's getting through. So if I zoom in here, you know, a little bit of that's still getting through, but not too bad. Your bass noise level for your quad is pretty darn good. This is the motor slider turned all the way up. So if I turn that down to like a normal, you know, that's your bass noise on your roll axis. So you're looking really good. One thing when you are looking at that kind of stuff, make sure you clip off the very front by hitting the I key and then clicking off the very back as well. And you can see why here. If I turn off this graphic here, and I go to the very end of the flight, you have a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of a bounce there or whatnot as it hits the ground before you disarm maybe. So you want to cut that out of there. So then that's where you'd want to then look at your noise level after that's done. So you can see it's pretty low. If I go back, I can look at the other axes. And you can see why I had the slider turned all the way up. So from a noise standpoint, you're in great shape. Wouldn't worry anything about that. Just make sure your filtering's low. One thing you could try, let me look at this for a second. Yeah, I would leave it. So I think noise-wise you have a good tune. Just looking at your Dterm roll, pitch, and yaw, I like to run those graphs and see if the dynamic notch or the static Dterm notch is really needed or not. And you can see you have a nice wide one here. I'm sure it's attenuating the noise in here as well. So yeah, I would leave that on for good measure. Oh yeah, I just noticed here at the end of the graph, you actually hit the ground and that's still armed yet, so you definitely want to clip all this out for checking out your noise. So we'd hit O to clip all that out of there before we'd look at that noise, but anyways. Okay, so this spot right here looks like a good spot at prop wash, so let's check that out. Let's do a bigger lead up to that just so you can see. Alright, well, it's not doing such a great job of recording it when I have the screen recording software on, but nevertheless, you can see the prop wash handling here. So what I wanted to show here is that if you look at you turn on the graphs for the gyro plus PID roll, gyro plus PID pitch, this then shows your P and D interacting together. So D always leads P, and you can see that occurring here. And then that's for the roll, and then for the pitch. So let's look at pitch specifically. You can see the D is leading P, and then if you have your PIDs, which shows the PID sum, and we just focus right here on the PID sum for pitch, you can see that results in the output, since D is leading P, that the output peak amplitude follows in between. So you can see how that works. Now as you increase D gains, what's going to happen is this graphic is going to be deeper. It's going to go farther down. And here's the inherent issue with filtering. Since D has an additional phase delay, it pushes this preceding line closer to be in phase with P. So it can't proceed it as far. So to overcome that, then you need a higher gain or basically crest of this sine wave here. It's not really a sine wave, but to overcome that. So you want to minimize your Dterm filtering as much as possible. Again, we're kind of getting back. Once you have that motor fixed, these are some of the things you can look at. Because once you got that motor fixed, it might fix this whole thing. You could turn off the Dterm notch, which is going to allow some more noise in, so it's kind of a compromise there. Or you just have to push that D gain up, which then that will make this peak crest push back. You know, it's going to make D control more than P. So essentially for prop wash scenarios, and getting back to that reference, Joshua Bardwell just put out a great video on tuning with a quad he was having some trouble with. And at the end of the day, for prop wash, you just keep punching up D. You do get, when you get super high Ds though, it's kind of risky. So there's a balance there. Definitely address that motor, or you're going to have super high Ds potentially. Secondarily, the bounce back scenario I thought was really good in his. Try to pay attention to that. They actually increased the Dterm set point weight to address sluggish bounce back. Now, I didn't see any sharp rolls in this. Usually when you're doing a tuning, you want to do a couple things. You want to take off, just fly smooth for a little bit, back and forth, nice and smooth. Then the next thing you want to do is some punch outs, just straight up punches. Try to have 0 stick input, and this would all be in the same log. 0 stick input here on the right hand side. Just punt or yaw, that's the tricky part. Don't have any yaw stick input. I have to focus on it a lot to make sure it's clean. And do a couple, because then we're trying to see if there's the dip in the nose or anything of that nature that we need to adjust eyes. I see you have an anti-gravity gain is still at 1. I would suspect that's going to need to be bumped up, that you would have some nose dip. Then the other thing I do is, I do a quick punch, 0 throttle, full roll right, and let it return to the center stick. I don't let go of the stick, because then it will return and kind of bobble around. But I want to return it back to center position very quickly. So you get that snap, basically that snap roll. And I'll do some to the right, some to the left, pitch forward, pitch back. And then after that, then I will do what you were doing here, is going back and forth for prop wash. So you want to get that all into a log and check all those things. Then you want to adjust PIDs accordingly, and so on and so forth. And you can start seeing. So it's to me, it's those elements that you want to capture. This captures the prop wash very well, but I didn't see anything for the hard rolls, pitches. There was no straight up just throttle punches, and it makes obviously looking at logs a lot simpler when you're isolating things down to single moves, not multiple moves where you're punching it up and rolling out and pitching back to the right. There's too much going on there to really to be able to assess with a black box log. All right, I hope some of this has helped. I know it's not specific, you know, saying, hey, do this, this, and this, because honestly that motor thing needs to be addressed first. But I think a part of this was just Blackbox and trying to learn a couple things there to move forward. Be happy to help out more. Sorry it took me a little bit to get this log or this recording back out to you, but it was a great weekend. Had the kids out, so we were trying to enjoy the sun. Thanks, bud. See ya.